So we're going to open this show a little bit differently. We're going to be a little bit unconventional. If you're watching on YouTube, we're always talking about our silly bull that we bought on Wall Street next to the actual bull statue. I love this thing because of what it represents. It represents optimism. And the bull actually has its own email address, and the bull got its first email this week.
Kind of fitting that the first week that we get an email to the bull, a tragedy befalls the bull. Do you want to show what you've done to the bull, Carl?
Yeah, this is kind of ominous in light of current economic conditions. A lot of people think a recession is coming, and the bull represents optimism, and a bull run, it represents the stock market going up. But the bull actually took a fall, and two of its legs broke off. And I ordered some glue from Amazon and glued them back on. It looks kind of janky. I'm holding it up for YouTube viewers. These two legs snapped off, and now they're glued back on. We'll see how well this holds up. I have a feeling like the whole economic state of the world depends on this bull. If they fall off again, it's going to be a bear market, and we're all screwed. But if my fix holds, maybe we can eke a little bit more economic growth out of the current markets.
Why are you holding it if the whole fate of the world rests on the statue of the bull? You're going to drop it. Put it down.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
My last phone I bought, I think I broke the screen within like 48 hours. Not good.
Yeah, he always gets a custom screensaver.
Yes. But should I read the first email the bull got? It's kind
Yes,
of interesting.
yes.
Okay. And this relates to you too. You're going to like it. This one comes from Michael. And I know Michael. He's a super cool guy in Ohio. So Michael says, "Dear Bull, first time, long time. Love your runs and what they do for our wealth. I have arguably the most difficult question in the world." And I agree, this is a very difficult question. So his question is, how could someone convince their spouse to buy a Cybertruck? And he
Make it look different.
Hold on one second. He signs off, "Cybertruckless in Cincinnati." So what was your response?
Michael, I am going to say you're going to have to make it look different. If your spouse is not on board right now, then she's probably not going to be until it looks way different, like a normal car.
Do you think there is a gender divide among people?
Yes.
Like, I don't think most people like it, but if you were,
You'd be right.
If you found 1,000 people who liked that thing, what percentage of them would be males versus females?
99.9 male?
I think you're a little low there. I think it's more like 99.99.
I know one woman who has one. My friend Julie. Shout out to Julie. She got it wrapped, and we were going to go see it, except apparently she moved, and I didn't catch that memo. So we are not going to see her Cybertruck.
I have a confession to make, and then we'll get into our interview. When I first saw the Cybertruck, when Elon Musk introduced that thing on stage, I thought it was quite horrific. And I guess I still have that feeling, but I kind of like it. If I was a truck person and it was a little bit cheaper, I think they're coming out with cheaper versions of it soon, I might buy one. I'm not going to because I'm not a truck person. We don't need another car, but dare I say it has grown on me.
Like mold?
Wow. Okay, let's get
So if I was a truck person and it was free, I still wouldn't drive it.
What if it was wrapped in hot pink camo?
I don't know why you think that's a selling point. No. It still looks like this.
Okay, well, you're not going to like your birthday.
Not if you give me a Cybertruck. All right. Let's actually start the show now that nobody else is listening. 3, 2, 1. Hi there. I'm Mindy Jensen.
And I'm Carl Cybertruck Jensen.
What? And this is the Mindy
And Cyber Carl.
Oh, you're ruining it. On Money Podcast, where we talk about what happens after you reach financial independence.
Why do we call this show Mindy on Money?
Because the URL was available.
Wow. Low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. Well, anybody listening to this show knows it's the bottom of the barrel. On this episode of the Mindy
And Cyber Carl.
on Money Podcast, Carl and I discuss his 7-year stint unemployed.
Ooh, but before we get started, let's take a quick break. Today's episode is sponsored by the Mindy on Money Scholarship Fund.
That's right. We're helping send Dan Sheik's group to Camp Phi through our scholarship at mindyonmoney.com/scholarship. We believe in in-person FI events. And while they're affordable for us, they're not affordable for everyone. Dan runs a group for young adults called Chics Freaks, and we're helping these young people get to Camp FI. You can donate directly at mindyonmoney.com/scholarship, or you can DM me or email Mindy at mindyonmoney.com, and I can connect you with Dan directly.
And just to be clear that we are supporting this as well, we contributed how much of our own funds?
We don't need to make this about us.
I don't want to make it about us. I just want to set an example that we're not just spouting this off and not actually helping ourselves.
We contributed $2,000. So feel free to match that at mindyonmoney.com/scholarship, or send $1. Every dollar counts.
Yeah, we'll give some people a shout out on the episode. This one, I want to really quick thank JT, who donated some money. Thank you, JT, our local friend and neighbor. You're awesome.
All right, Carl, between the two of us, we have 2 full-time jobs, but you're unemployed. How does that work?
So you're implying that you work 2 full-time jobs and I don't work at all?
Are you implying that I don't work 2 full-time jobs and that you do work?
How am I going to get my Cybertruck if you don't have 2 full-time jobs? That thing isn't cheap.
Boy, howdy.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today?
Leaving your job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this whole idea came from a conversation I had with a friend named Neil, who I had lunch with a couple weeks ago. He still is employed, but he told me he's been working less and trying to do more stuff. Specifically, he's out in nature all the time, doing hikes. He goes on these 4-wheel drives on off-road trails with his. And the thing I asked him was, I'm like, hey, Neil, if you quit work altogether, would you have any trouble with the transition? And his response was, no, if I was up to my savings goal, I would quit right now and I wouldn't have any issue with it.
Okay, so we were married when you quit your job, and I got to know, what was the difference between your mindset when you first hit your original FI number and his mindset now when he hasn't quite reached his FI number?
Yeah, he has structured his life better than I have. He's already doing stuff. He's already thinking about what life is going to look like after work, and he has already integrated these things into his life, which I didn't do. It really couldn't do because we were so busy with the house remodel, the blog, and everything else. It was not a way to effectively transition.
Okay, but you chose to crank out the work hard. We already discussed that we did it wrong.
Yeah, the decisions you make when you have 500,000 are different than the decisions you make when you have 4 times that.
Not us.
We decided to buy this fixer-upper house. We originally had small dreams for it, and those small dreams quickly escalated to very big dreams, and it consumed our life. How long did that take us to finish?
About 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years, and 5 years of very hard work. I did a lot of it myself, which I shouldn't have. We've talked about that before. And doing that at the same time, working a full-time job and trying to keep up my blog, probably working 80 to 100 hours a week for years on end.
Yeah, I was having a conversation yesterday with someone, and I shared that, he had said that he was doing everything wrong, or he had done everything wrong. I'm like, I did everything wrong in a different direction. Together, you and I, but you weren't on that call, so I just said I. We focused on the end goal, not the middle, not the journey. And we didn't really focus on enjoying the journey at all. And if I could go back and do it over again, I think I would. And we might not be at this specific position financially if we did things differently, but I think our lives would have been much better if we had done that.
Ooh, that's a really good point. And we're going to talk a little bit more about optimization later.
Ooh, you can't say that.
In
Ramit
the
said
show,
you can't say that word.
Yeah, it's the bad O word, but we optimize too much for money and not enough for life. I remember we were working on these houses, and this may have even been a previous one, and we had a couple friends over, and they started talking about these TV shows. I think zombie TV shows were a thing. What was that show? Walking Dead or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
I've never seen it, but they go into this conversation about these shows, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. We moved into this house 2 years ago, and our TV is still in the box because all we've been doing is working on the house.
And that's not to say that I miss, watching TV. There's a whole lot of garbage on. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of scroll past it content.
That is true, but just because we didn't watch a lot of TV doesn't mean there couldn't have been other things we were doing or working on. And the main thing I'm thinking of is my fitness. I probably went years without doing strength exercise or running or anything to keep up my health. Now, granted, working on a home is physically demanding, so there is that, but it's not the same as a good workout. And there's that, just being out in nature, taking a walk, I don't know, all the other things that people do in life when they're not at work and not doing chores.
So this kind of goes back to episode 23, which we called the boring middle. So many people discover Fi, jump in, and find themselves kind of in a holding pattern, waiting for the end. Don't wait for the end to make your life awesome. Make your life awesome now, even if that pushes back the end for a little while longer. I mean, the end of working, not the end of your life. So, Carl, out of the two of us, like I alluded to I said straight out at the beginning of the episode, I have 2 full-time jobs and you have 0 jobs. So I want to talk to you about the transition period and the stepping off the cliff, if you will, of leaving employment and embracing early retirement. So, Carl, why is the transition from work to retirement difficult?
Ooh. Before I get into that, I want to tell a quick story. My first job out of college was working at a big retailer named Sears, which I think has since gone bankrupt, right?
Oh, I don't know. Are they completely gone?
I don't know if they're completely gone, but they filed for bankruptcy. In any case, I was working in their IT department in their heyday, but the company was starting to go down, and they would have these round of layoffs every couple months. It was very sad and very tense to be there, but I remember one time I was there, and someone came up to me and said, "Hey, there's going to be another round of layoffs tomorrow, but Carl, you're okay. But I have to tell you, the guy across the cube, he is going to be laid off, the guy across the row of cubes." And that guy was named Chuck. And the next day came, and I saw Chuck's manager come to get him. And 15 minutes later, Chuck came back to clean his cube, and I'll never forget this because he was crying, this guy. And I remember he was a fit guy. He would work out in the gym. He had a lot of muscles. This manly man guy was just bawling his eyes out. And I saw that, and I'm like, oh, my God. And I started thinking about that and started thinking about this guy. And his whole life was wrapped up in Sears. Like, they had intramural teams. They had these things on weekends that you could do with other people who worked there, and he did all that. So when he lost his job, he not only lost his job, he lost his life. Like, everything he did during his waking hours was now gone. And I thought that was quite profound. And yeah, I assume he eventually landed on his feet, but I'm happy I saw that early on because it was a lesson for me to try to not wrap myself up too much in my job, to keep it at arm's length and just have it be a place to make money. I mean, it's good to get along with your coworkers and all that kind of thing, but you don't want to intermesh your life too much with that. So I'll go back to your original question. Why is the transition difficult? I think it's going to be one of the biggest life changes you'll ever make, right? It's not going to be as big as getting married or having a kid or a divorce, but it's close to that, right? Because you spend at least 40 hours at work. You might spend more time with your coworkers than you do your spouse. I mean, how many hours are you awake for, especially if you have kids that you're shuttling around? So it's going to be this huge life disruption, especially if you've got your friend network tied up into that. And I've read recently that a lot of adult males don't do well if they lose their spouse or after they retire because their whole life is tied up in that job. So I think the main reason people struggle with this transition is we ask too much of our jobs and we put too much of ourselves into them.
So you said divorce. That's really quite profound. You are divorcing all of the people that you worked with. And like you said, you're spending 40 hours a week with these people. You were right across the cube hall from Chuck You saw him for 40 hours a week. Maybe you weren't interacting, but he was there all the time. And I think divorcing your job is a really interesting way to look at it. That's a lot of emotion around it. That's a lot of like negative emotion around it. As we've seen from some friends and society in general, it's kind of easier to stay married to someone that you don't really like than it is to get a divorce and see what else is out there.
Ooh, I think that's a great point. In general, people are adverse to change, even if they know the change is going to benefit them. If you early retire, you're probably at your job for a couple decades, and then you've got the sunk cost of everything you did to build that career in college. So you're giving up a lot, and the path of least resistance is just to stay and keep doing that thing, right?
Exactly. That is the path of least resistance. So take the path of a little bit of resistance. Carl, since you are the godfather here, grandfather?
Godfather? What are you talking about? I'm not that old.
What advice would you give to someone who worries about money?
Ooh, worries about money.
On the path to early retirement and, I'm here, but I don't trust the math. I do, but I don't.
I would say you need to create a plan ahead of time. Establish those goalposts, know when you're going to leave, and adhere to them. Don't move them like so many people do. There's the 1 year syndrome people always talk about, which happens when you get to your goalposts, and then all of a sudden you decide that those goalposts aren't good enough and you move them back. If you think you have to do that, you should consider why you didn't like your original plan in the first place. And things change. I'm not saying don't be flexible. Maybe something happened and your life needs more money, but if everything stayed the same, why aren't you adhering to your original plan?
Well, and I think that last little bit is really important. If everything stays the same, what if you are getting to the point of retirement and you happen to peek at the stock market and you notice that it just dropped 30%? Okay, then everything didn't stay the same. That is maybe cause for pushing it back a little bit. See what happens. Oh, now the stock market's down 50%. Maybe this isn't the best time to leave your job. But if everything is the same-ish, and your original plan that you made when you were clear-headed is to quit on August 30th, then follow through. Or have a rock-solid reason for why you're not following through. Not just, ooh, I'm nervous. You know, I really love how Millennial Revolution did it. They were still working. They had reached their FI number. And then they started to live off of the 4% rule while still having this safety net. So they tested it out, essentially, before they actually had to pull the trigger. Logically, you can believe the numbers in the research, but mentally it can get hard to get over that hump. And I fully acknowledge that I am sitting here saying, oh, you should totally retire while I still have a job and we're well past our FI number. So yes, this is do as I say, not as I do.
Nice. One thing I'll say before we go on to the next question is, I think this is changing, but for the longest time, a job was an all or nothing situation. You either work 40 hours a week or how many hours you go for, and then you quit, and that's it. There is no in between. I think COVID changed this, and I think the gig economy has changed this, where a lot of people have looser relationships with their jobs, right? Especially big tech. A lot of those companies encourage you to take time off, a sabbatical, mental health breaks, things like that. I think a lot more companies are amenable to going part-time, maybe being a contractor. So this doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation where you're working your butt off all these years and then you just stop and jump off the cliff to nothing. Why not try to transition a little bit more? Why not try to transition a little easier where you work part-time or you take time off? And another thing this does for you is it gives you time to take Phi for a test drive. There's some people, not many, but there's some people who they quit their job and then they go back to work. But if you do this, if you do it this way, if you take it for a test drive, you might have the opportunity to go back to work after a while. You might have the opportunity to go back to work, and it's a little bit less stressful knowing that you still have your job in your back pocket.
I think that's really important. Having a safety net, having just a mental safety net. Oh, I can always go back and get a job. I think it's important to keep apprised of the financial markets without obsessing about them. I really like what Millennial Revolution did just all over the board. They have a 3-year cash cushion. They have the ability to geographically arbitrage their spending, and they've really put a lot of thought into it. And that's a recurring theme that I keep getting over and over from people that I am speaking to on either of my podcasts, is that they're putting thought into their plans. They're not just having a savings goal of $1 million, and when they reach it, they cut and run. They're thinking about what they're going to do. Now that I've gotten to the $1 million, is this really where I want to be? Does this really align with my spending? I mean, you and I even had the wrong thing. We're like, oh, we're totally only going to spend $40,000. And then we started checking out our spending. We're like, oh, we're spending $60,000. So that's different. And if we only had $1 million, and what a snob I am, if we only had $1 million, we would be at risk of running out of money if we were spending $60,000. Our investments have increased. We do continue to invest. And our FI number has changed for a lot of reasons, but also we could pull back if we needed to. I don't know where I was going with that. Let's just move on. What would you tell someone who worries about purpose? I think Doc G is so good at the concept of purpose.
Ooh, purpose. And let's not forget that the whole reason for this FI thing, the whole purpose of the purpose is to find your purpose in life and to be doing what you really want to do. It's the whole, I keep on using the word, the whole purpose of FI isn't to quit your job. The whole purpose is to live the life you really want. But how do you do that when you have a full-time job? The first thing you should do is build the life you want now. And that's going to be difficult, especially if you've got a full-time job with kids. But you should be thinking about what really lights you up, what you would do if you had $10 million, if some crazy relative left you $10 million and you never had to work, what would you do with your life? And there's no reason you can't start doing those things now. Get yourself in shape, play the guitar, learn a language, whatever hobbies lights you up. You can do those now, and you'll just get to do more of them once you quit your job. So find purpose outside of work. And I understand this could be hard for some people. I was talking to someone at a Camp FI, and I said the $10 million question, and he happened to be an anesthesiologist, and he's like, I love my job so much that I would do this for free. I would pay to do it. That's how much I like being an anesthesiologist. And I think, how awesome is that? If you have a job that you would do for free or you would pay to do it, you're already FI at that point because someone's paying you to do what you love. But at that point, I imagine there's still other things he wants to do in his life. I'm pretty sure this guy had a family and kids, so maybe you can negotiate a way to do what you really love, but on looser terms. Maybe you don't have to do it for 60 hours a week or for full time. Maybe you can take summers off or do it on a contract basis. So try to find a way to negotiate looser terms with your work if you really love your work and if you actually would do it for free, which I don't think most people would. Like, how many people do you think would work for free? Because I always hear people say that, like, oh, I love my job, I would never quit. But I think they're mostly full of, I'm going to hold the bull up here, I think they're mostly full of this, YouTube viewers.
Broken leg bull.
Look at the bull, yeah. I think they're mostly full because I think if most people had an infinite amount of money, they would not stay at their job.
Kind of feel called out there, Carl, because I have more money than I will ever spend, and I still choose to work.
So you could buy me the Cybertruck.
Jobs. I could. Absolutely, I could buy you the Cybertruck. Am I going to? Not a chance.
Wow, I would let you drive it.
That's not a selling point at all. Did you find a lot of identity in your job?
Ooh, this is pretty interesting. So with me, I had some financial insecurity, so I chose the job purely based on money. I had a roommate who went for computer science and said, "Hey, you can do this," and he told me what starting pay was, and I think it was like 40,000 back then. I'm seriously dating myself. I was at Bucky's, the gas station, and they had a job posting there. Cashiers make what I made at my starting IT job, which I thought was a huge amount of money 25 years ago. So I chose my job strictly because I thought it would pay me a lot. But it turned out I really enjoyed it too. How fortunate am I to find something that paid well and that I enjoyed doing too. So that was super good. But I didn't find identity in it. I mean, do computer nerds find identity in being a computer nerd?
Yes.
Okay.
I know a lot of computer programmers who really embrace that identity. They're excited that they know so much about technology and they're happy to share their information. That is their identity. I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the identity of their job, and that's kind of hard to separate from employment when that's your whole being. Do you think the bulk of your friends were from your job?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. At first, I wanted to say yes because I worked with a great group of people that I really liked. Also good. I don't know if any of them are listening, but I never hung out with them after work. Maybe like once a year we'd go out for dinner or something after work, and a lot of times it was a work thing. So are those people really friends? I guess I was friendly with them at work, and I liked them, but I guess they weren't my friends. My life wasn't built around hanging out with them outside of work.
Do you still keep in touch with them?
No, actually I don't. But that might be because we don't live in Chicagoland anymore, which is where my job is. I imagine if I lived there, I think I probably would get in touch with them, or I haven't been back to Chicago in a while. If I went back there, I might ping them and see if they want to meet up. I am curious to see what they're doing now. And like I said, they were great people. I'm thankful to have been able to work with them.
So was your life intricately wrapped up in your job, or was it just a place to go and earn money? Because I think this is a really big sticking point for a lot of people, much like your story about Chuck. You're at your job for 40 hours a week. You are working in very close proximity to a lot of different people. You pick and choose the ones that you like and get along with, and then you form kind of this little group. We just had dinner with Amy a couple of nights ago, and she shared that she still has a once monthly Zoom with coworkers from a job from 9 years ago. And at first I was like, wow, I'm kind of jealous because 9 years ago, I was at Bigger Pockets still.
Whoa.
So I still talk to some people who no longer work there, but not once monthly, not, on any sort of regular basis. And none of the people that Amy is Zooming with still work at this company, and it's been 9 years. So they all keep in touch, and I think that's really, really great. But it's hard, it's hard to leave if you work at a place where you truly like the people, but you can also just leave and still keep in touch with them. So I'll ask that again. Was your life intricately wrapped up into your job, or was it just a place to go earn some money?
It was a place to earn money. And I'll disagree with you on that last point. I think a lot of people say when they retire or they leave their job that they'll keep in touch with their coworkers. And I don't think many people actually do. Like, how many of your people from old jobs do you still keep in touch with?
0.
Yeah, and they weren't bad people, right? I remember you
No.
liked a lot of your coworkers, so.
I did. There were some people that instantly fell off. Like, I no longer work here. I no longer talk to this group of people. But there's always a couple that you stay in touch with for a few months or a few years. And then it just kind of, like, we've moved 6 times since the last time I had a job before Bigger Pockets. It's been a while. I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. Life gets in the way, and you just kind of fall off from talking to these people.
So I just had a thought right now. I think for both of us, well, this is my initial thought. and then I'm going to turn it around back on you. This will be good. My initial thought was that neither of us had our identity tied up in our jobs. It was just a place to go earn money. You were a buyer for a quilting supply company. You did graphic design for another company. But I think for both of us, it was just a place to go earn money. But now, I would say your identity is a little bit more wrapped up in your job. What do you think about that?
I don't think you're wrong. I really love talking about real estate and money, and I really love sharing what I know with people who may not have that same knowledge. So I've never considered myself a teacher. I have very little patience sometimes, especially for math with our fifth grader. But I really like being able to share this information that I have. And I think more and more it is like the two are becoming one, which I don't know. That's weird.
It is weird,
Kind
but
of cheesy.
our life. I just wrote a blog post about this. My most recent blog post is, I don't even remember what I titled it, which I should because I wrote the thing a couple days ago, but it was something like FI has taken over our lives. I was thinking about our recent trip where every place we stopped, we visited people. It was either friends we made in the FI community or we visited with a local Choose FI group. If you think about it, we live in this house because we met our local friend Eric and we liked his neighborhood and we met him on the Mr. Money Mustache forums. So even where we live is tied up with the whole FI community. And since we moved into this house, two other people who we met through the FI community have moved here, and there's more on the way. Someone else is moving here next month, which is pretty interesting. So you have a job. I kind of have a job like what I'm doing right now that I don't get paid for, except you might buy me the Cybertruck.
I won't.
And it's kind of taken over our lives, which I never anticipated that happening. But I think that's different from a job and what we're talking about with that kind of identity. This is our identity now, but it's not. If you left your work or we stopped doing this podcast, we would still have all these friends, and I'm sure we would continue to hang out with them and visit them when we travel around the country.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever leave the FI community. I think I'll still be creating content for a super long time. I mean, nobody's talking about life after financial independence. So I really want to keep this going. But I don't know. It doesn't, I was about to say, it doesn't rule my life, but I mean, what else do we talk about?
We talk about Cybertrucks sometimes.
Yeah, with derision.
Okay, but before we go on, the bull wants to ask me a question.
Ugh.
If you're watching on YouTube, the bull is asking me something. Okay, the bull wants to know if it can still go on the FI cruise. Speaking of FI being intertwined in our lives, if it can still go on Amberly Fintalk's FI cruise with its newly broken legs.
Yes, they'll be long since broken by the time the cruise comes around. In February 2 through 8, 2025, amberlygrant.com/cruise if you are interested in joining us and meeting the broken-legged bull.
And I don't think the bull should go in the hot tub anymore with the legs. Sorry, bull.
Ew, no.
Yeah, that'd be bad. It probably would be bad even without the broken legs.
Can we move on?
Yes. Okay.
What advice would you give to someone on the FI path to set themselves up for success? What advice would you give to somebody in the beginning of their journey?
Ooh, I'm going to use the O word again. I think different seasons of life, you should optimize for different things. So I remember when I was young, I had my first job. I hadn't met you yet. I had no girlfriend, no family. I would come home from work at like 5 o'clock and have like 4 or 5 hours of nothing to do with my life. So that's the time in your life when you really want to work hard and optimize for money. The other benefit of doing this, besides having the time to do it, is that you're going to give your money your whole life to grow. If you can invest $1 at 25, that dollar means a whole lot more than one invested at 45. So throw yourself into your job, show up before everyone else, leave after everyone else, write your accomplishments down, demand a raise when it comes time for your review or a promotion. consider a house hack. You're not going to be able to live with a bunch of strangers once you have kids, or a partner who might not be willing to put up with this. So when you're young, now's the time to really be a little bit uncomfortable in ways that won't make sense later on in life.
That's great. The only thing I would correct you for is you said demand a raise. And I'm going to soften that advice a little bit and say request a raise with a lot of documentation to back up why you deserve that raise. Don't just walk into your boss's office and say, I demand a raise. Like I'm thinking back to Michael Scott, who walks out into the office and says, I declare bankruptcy. And one of the accounting guys comes over. He's like, that's not how it's done. Don't demand a raise. Go in with a stack of documentation that proves why you deserve that raise and ask for a specific amount. But aim high, because you can't ask for a $5,000 raise. And then when they say yes, say, oh, would you do 10? Doesn't work like that.
So I can't sit here and demand a Cybertruck right now.
You can.
I'll let you drive it.
Again, that doesn't sell it. Okay, how does your advice differ for somebody in the middle of their journey?
Okay, let's say you're 10 years into your career. You might be married at this point. You might have kids. Hopefully you have some good savings established and you can let off the gas a little bit. Now's the time in your life where your priorities start changing. You want to focus on your family, and you want to start focusing on building that life outside of work. Your whole life doesn't have to be at your job. You also might want to start diversifying your investments to safer assets. We are not financial advisors in any way. If you take advice from people on the internet who play with toy bulls online, you should probably hire a CFP. But when we were young, we were very risky with our stocks, 100% stocks and pure stocks too, because we didn't know what index funds. I don't think I'd recommend that for someone. If we were doing it over again, I'd be 100% index funds to start out with. But as you grow older, you might want to diversify into cash and bonds, be a little bit safer depending on how comfortable you are with risk.
And I'm going to go back to episode 23 and recommend, if you have not yet listened to The Boring Middle, go do so, because that is a lot of advice that we have already shared as well. Carl, what advice would you give to somebody nearing the end of their FI journey?
It's time to start optimizing for life. It's time to figure out what you want to do and what you want your life to look like post-job. So take your foot off the gas pedal of your job and start figuring everything else out. Maybe negotiate a looser relationship with work, go part-time, take a sabbatical, maybe quit altogether. A lot of jobs, especially big tech, let you leave and your job stays open if you come back within a certain amount of time. So look into that, talk to HR, see what you can negotiate.
Yeah, take retirement for a test drive. And if you take a sabbatical and hate it, go back or go to a different job. Go test out a different job. There's lots of opportunities out there. You don't have to just quit and be like, now what? In fact, I encourage you not to quit until you know what you have. And I will say that Darren and Jolene have a really different perspective from me. They quit without knowing what they were going to do, and they still made it work. They have a great life. They love it. We're going to talk to them in the future. They are on the Mile High FI podcast this week, so definitely go listen to them over on Carl's other podcast. But they specifically did not quit to anything. But they're also not the kind of people who would just sit around and be bored all day. Like, they find things to do every single day together. And I think it's really important to have something to do. Don't just sit around and watch TV for the rest of your life, unless that's like brings you joy, in which case, who am I to tell you what to do?
Yeah, my final thought with all this is the whole point of FI is to find the work that's really meaningful to you. And with that, you have to redefine work. Work can mean training for a marathon. It could be volunteering. It could still be doing whatever your real work is. But people aren't happy sitting around. I know I don't sit around at all.
No. Oh, my goodness. I would love for you to sit around for 5 minutes.
I've been trying. I floated around in the pool and closed my eyes and counted my breaths to 100. So the whole point of this isn't to do nothing or to live a life of leisure. It's to do the things that are really important to you. And I'll call those things work. but it's work you choose to do on your own terms, and it's the work that's really important to you and gets you into that critical flow state.
Yeah. Okay, so for those of you who are considering retiring or are already retired and still have skills that you want to share with others, I'm going to send you back to episode 21, where we interviewed Alex, she works in big tech and she was contemplating retirement, but she has all these skills. And near the end of the episode, we talked about creating something called the Phi Brain Trust. And we recorded it before we released it. So we went and snagged that URL so that we could create a Phi Brain Trust. Go to fibraintrust.com to sign up to be a mentor to an entrepreneur, to be able to share your skills with others who might not be able to afford them in a retail setting, but you want to help them because we're all in the same community and they've got this really great idea. We will, of course, connect with you before we connect you with somebody who might need your skills to give you all the information that we have. But fibraintrust.com and let us know what you're thinking.
Cool.
And shout out to Alex for creating that awesome logo. I love it. All right, Carl, I think we're at the end of our story.
Okay. Maybe we should leave the final thought to the bull. Actually, that the bull has nothing to say.
Okay. I was going to say, is he going to moo or something? Oh, my God.
That's the noise bulls make, right? You probably thought that was a real bull. It wasn't. That was my voice.
Yeah. For those of you who are listening to the audio only, there is no actual bull in our basement, but I'm sure you knew that. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. So we threw a lot of URLs at you during this episode. You can find them at mindyonmoney.com/S1/38. So that's S1 like season 1, 38 like episode 38, which is what this episode is.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Oh, we'll put a link in the show notes to the show notes?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. That's so meta.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. I don't know what meta means.
I'll
Okay,
put a
bye.
pic of the bull in the show notes too.